In 1966, NASCAR inspectors faced a mystery they couldn't explain: a Pontiac 421 engine that measured legal in every way yet produced power rivals thought impossible. Every bore, every stroke, and every carburetor passed inspection, yet in every race, it destroyed engines with far more displacement. Smokey Yunick built it.
He was just, and it didn't make any difference whether a midget or a sprint car, an Indy car, a sports car, a stock car, whatever it was.
A World War II B-17 flight engineer who brought military precision to stock car racing. He didn't break rules, he rewrote them in secret. Before dawn in 1963, a lone yellow light glowed inside a battered Daytona Beach garage. Inside, surrounded by cigarette smoke and hot metal, Smokey wasn't building a car. He was building a weapon, an engine so controversial it would force NASCAR to rewrite the rulebook. This is the story of Smokey Yunick's infamous 421 Pontiac engine, the secret monster that stunned competitors, angered officials, and became one of the most controversial power plants in NASCAR history. To understand the engine, you have to understand the man. Smokey wasn't born with privilege. He earned everything, through war, through loss, through grit. After flying 50 missions in World War II, he returned home with a survivor's attitude and a hatred for rules that made no sense. Racing became his new battlefield, and his enemy wasn't Ford or Chevrolet. It was the gray areas nobody else dared to explore. When Pontiac approached Smokey for their NASCAR program, they didn't ask him to compete, they asked him to dominate. But the problem was simple and fatal. Pontiac's existing race engines were slow, heavy, and strangled by restrictive NASCAR rules. Smokey studied the engines, tore them apart, and realized Pontiac didn't need an upgrade. They needed a revolution, something NASCAR couldn't predict, something they wouldn't discover until it was too late. Officially, Pontiac didn't have a 421 cubic inch engine for NASCAR. The biggest legal mill was smaller, but Smokey didn't accept legal as a boundary. He accepted it as a suggestion. He built his own. The bottom end of the engine sat on Smokey's workbench, like a ticking bomb. Every piece had been massaged, lightened, polished, or machined until it looked nothing like the part Pontiac delivered. The cylinders weren't bored, they were sculpted. The walls were so precise that Smokey later joked a mosquito couldn't land inside without getting cut. The compression was so high that ordinary fuel would detonate on contact. Smokey didn't care. He brought his own blend. Most builders chased horsepower by adding parts. Smokey removed them. Anything that added weight, drag, heat, or turbulence was cut, reshaped, or modified. He widened oil passages, redesigned the crankcase breathing, and created a lubrication system that nobody in NASCAR had ever seen. The engine didn't just make power. It stayed alive under stress that should have split the block in half. Then came the heads. To NASCAR officials, these were Pontiac heads. Technically, yes, but Smokey treated the word technically like it was a magical doorway. He re-angled ports, reshaped combustion chambers, and opened valve sizes until the heads flowed like a fire hose. The rules didn't forbid it. They also didn't imagine anyone would try it. Smokey's favorite place to hide secrets was the space between what was written and what was assumed. When he fired the engine for the first time, the garage shook. Rivals claimed it sounded like a bomb about to detonate. Pontiac engineers who watched the dyno test swore it made power no factory 421 ever could. Smokey didn't reveal numbers. He never did. But those who were there estimate that this outlaw engine produced well over 500 horsepower, an insane figure for early 60s NASCAR. But power wasn't the secret. The secret was that Smokey had built an engine that could outrun NASCAR inspectors. He knew they would look for displacement. He gave them stock appearing pistons, only they weren't stock. He had moved the wrist pin location just enough to change the effective stroke. To inspectors, it looked legal. To Smokey, it gave him extra cubic inches without leaving a trace. He knew they would measure carburetors, so he left the carb alone. What he didn't leave alone was the air entering it. Smokey reshaped the intake manifold until airflow accelerated like a jet engine, squeezing through a narrow throat. Again, technically legal, completely insane. He knew they would check fuel lines, so he built a fuel line the size of a garden hose, holding an extra half-gallon of fuel inside. When they questioned it, he responded with the now legendary line, "You can't find that in your rulebook either." Smokey didn't cheat the rules. He attacked the gaps between them. When the 1963 season approached, rumors were spreading like wildfire. Rivals whispered that Smokey had built something illegal. NASCAR inspectors tightened checkpoints. Engine lids were being opened twice, sometimes 3 times. Smokey remained calm. He enjoyed the game. He enjoyed being smarter than the system. The moment of truth came at inspection in Daytona. Officials swarmed the car. They checked the bore, stroke, valves, carburetor, fuel tank. They measured everything twice. They crawled under the car until they were covered in Smokey's shop dust. They found a dozen things they didn't like, but every time Smokey flipped to the same section of the rulebook and pointed to the same quiet truth. It wasn't written. The inspectors, frustrated, eventually pulled the fuel tank completely out of the car. They placed it on the ground. Smokey climbed in, turned the ignition, and fired the engine. The car roared to life. "You're missing 11 things," he said, and drove off. It became the most infamous moment in NASCAR inspection history. But while the fuel tank incident became the legend, it distracted officials from the real crime: the engine sitting under the hood. When the car finally hit the track, it wasn't just fast, it was unnatural. Pontiac's factory teams were shocked. Ford drivers were angry. NASCAR officials watched from pit lane with narrowed eyes. Smokey's engine didn't accelerate. It lunged. It didn't open the throttle. It punched through air like a battering ram. Even at half pace, it threatened to break track records. NASCAR had a problem. Smokey Yunick had outsmarted them again. As the season continued, so did the controversy. Teams protested. Inspectors increased checks. Smokey pushed back harder. The more they tightened the rules, the more he discovered ways around them. Eventually, NASCAR rewrote displacement regulations. They banned certain head modifications. They implemented standardized measurements for fuel systems. Secretly, they created procedures specifically designed to stop Smokey. Publicly, they called it closing loopholes. Smokey called it fear. Pontiac eventually left NASCAR. The politics were too heavy, the costs too high, the target around Smokey's cars too big. But the 421 engine, Smokey's outlaw masterpiece, remained one of the most important engines in stock car history. It forced NASCAR to evolve. It exposed invisible flaws in the rulebook. It proved that the most dangerous tool in racing wasn't horsepower, it was creativity. Smokey never apologized. He never denied building the engine. He simply said, "They built the rules. I just read them better." And even decades later, when historians dig through Pontiac's archives, when restorers try to understand how Smokey made that power, when fans debate where innovation ends and cheating begins, one truth remains: nobody ever built another Pontiac engine like it, because nobody else was Smokey Yunick. His illegal 421 wasn't just an engine, it was a message to NASCAR, to competitors, to the world. The rulebook is only as strong as the man trying to break it. If you love legendary automotive stories and secrets from the golden age of racing, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell to dive into more jaw-dropping racing legends. You won't believe the next story.